Hi. Sorry, I was in my own Zoom room.
Oh, I should.
No,
I
no,
didn't get an invitation.
it was my fault. No, Michelle sent me the right thing, and I just completely spaced that I was
That's okay.
I'm like on that thing all day. So, um,
How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a while, eh?
It's been a while.
I was looking at the phone when I texted you. I saw our last text was from like 2018. So
That's a while ago.
time goes by in a flash, you know. But look what I found in my little collection of music.
That's a beautiful. Um, that's a beautiful way to start your evening. I guess it is.
Well, hey, you know, I actually do have a question. I'm sure you get asked this all the time, and if you know the question, feel free to interrupt. But Adrian Grenier, of course, was in Adventures of Power, and then went on to do Entourage, whose cast includes a major character with the name Ari Gold.
This is true.
So I guess the question would be, did you ever watch that show?
Entourage. I think I've heard of it.
Did you? So was he named a Jeremy Piven's character after you? Or do I have the timing off? Is it just a coincidence?
Well, no, it's not really a coincidence. I mean, I was named before Entourage. This I will for sure.
Right. That's probably the case.
Yeah. He played in a band with me, or we had played in a band together. He was the drummer and sometimes singer, and but basically mostly the drummer in a band called the Honey Brothers. And his managers came to a bunch of shows. And if I remember correctly, the pilot episode, the Jeremy Piven character was named Ari Jacobs. So it was quite a surprise when I went to the premiere and they changed it to Ari Gold. And Adrian said, "Oh, we thought it was a cool sounding name." I don't think he was responsible for it, but his managers who created the show probably were. And then they denied it because it would have been grounds for a suit, which I didn't sue them. And then as the years went on and it got more and more egregious with like a billboard in Times Square reading Ari Gold is a douchebag, literally, then I thought maybe I should be compensated, or I should have been asked or something, but it was too late.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, it's still you know, they say, I guess it's a form of flattery on some level, somehow.
That's what Adrian would say to me, but I was like, as soon as there's a character named Adrian Grenier who's, you know,
a douche,
a douche, or having sex with chickens or something, you know, then we could talk about how cool it is to have your name be used by a TV show. But you know, such is life. I learned that there are other Ari Golds out there as well. I'm not the only one who has this problem. And I think all of us really are struggling to find and place our identity in the world. And so this created a little fun challenge for me.
Well, I appreciate you're getting a little esoteric on it. It's true, though. It's well, anyway, I just occurred because I wasn't looking for this, or for, sometimes I do things like I'll look for some conversation piece, you know, something to kind of start things off, but I didn't feel like I had to do that with you. But I found this coincidentally the other day and I said, I put it aside. I thought, oh, this will be fun to bring up. I have a number of Ethan's, of course, collections of music. So, but I had forgotten I had that. And anyway, so I'm going to put it on later.
I feel bad that I don't have a beautiful microphone, but
oh, this is just a prop, doesn't do anything.
Yeah. You sound more manly than I do with that thing.
I don't know about that.
Gold. Yeah.
So you're publishing something? Is that what?
Well, yeah, some very. I just published poems in Tablet magazine. I during lockdown, my dad, who's a writer, written a lot of novels and an esteemed writer of his generation, um, but he wasn't writing so much. I think his eyes aren't so good, and he was isolated, and
Oh,
so I started writing, and he's perfectly cognizant of everything, but things were difficult, and so I started mailing him poems of my own by U.S. mail with envelopes pre-stamped to make it easy for him, saying, "Write a poem today, Dad.
wow.
Read my poem and write a response poem, essentially." And so we started this correspondence through U.S. mail and poetry, and then my brother also started doing the same. And so I sent a very large collection of poems to Tablet magazine, and they selected I think 10 to create a kind of correspondence between father and sons about love and death and life and art. And yeah, it was really lovely to be published as a poet and to do it with my family.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
quite cool. And I'd actually like to turn it into a book. So
Well, I was going to say this is I'm glad then we're talking about it, because if I personally have some literary connections, some publishing world connections. Be happy to I don't know, assist in my own little way if I can.
yeah, that would be wonderful.
I mean, the more I guess you have, the better. But I think
My
it's
dad
just,
has his eye on Percival Press, which is Viggo Mortensen's poetry book company,
oh,
but we don't know how to get to them. They
you
have a
don't
do not submit manuscripts to a
policy.
policy.
Even
Uh,
when it's even through an agent, because typically I guess you have to have an agent.
yeah, no, and I'm actually I've finished a novel recently as well, and have a couple agents looking at that. So if that door gets opened, then that'll be a
Right.
lot easier.
Because I think there's that, I mean, as you're kind of describing and couching the, this the uh, the genesis of this project. It's like it clearly, it's a story of in itself. There's something kind of inspiring about it, and beautiful.
Yeah, you mean
My
the genesis of this poetry collection?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And just
I mean,
how it
actually,
how it
an interesting thing.
organically.
The novel actually takes a similar form, and I did not even think of that until this moment. But the novel actually takes the very same form, because the novel is in the form of a memoir, even though it's half fiction. And every 3 or 4 chapters, I have a letter from my dad advising me about the novel. But since the main character is named Ari and it's sort of me,
Right.
these letters take on the air of a father trying to get not just the protagonist of this novel to make better choices, but trying to get his son to make better choices.
Oh, uh-huh.
And so I guess that's sort of I guess it's a theme in my writing now. So whether I now realizing it. So, and I'm cutting my helicopter movie about my mother, which contains a lot of letters that she wrote to her friend when she was alive, and there's a kind of dialogue with that as well. So it seems to be kind of a theme I'm gravitating towards, is healing family wounds in this kind of, it's not trying to be meta, but in a way where you see the dialogue between family members, whether it's in literature or in film. So
Mm.
seems to, and I went back to my grandfather's town where he was born, and I've done some ancestral research and kind of exploring the idea if you can almost heal your genetic line by healing stuff in the past, just kind of like time travel epigenetics. Maybe that's
Uh-huh.
my time travel epigenetics. I just found my shtick.
That's your shtick. I think that's absolutely achievable, because really you're just sort of making peace, right? I mean, there's closure. Yeah, I totally buy into that.
It's the experiment that I'm making with, I was just looking at, and I apologize, by the way, for being late on the call, but I was
Oh,
looking at,
come on. It was just, I knew we were going to do this.
um, but yeah, I've been looking at footage of, I did a screening of my short film about my mother's death, and screened it in Ukraine, where my grandfather on my father's side was born. And I filmed the audience reaction to the movie. And not only was that kind of itself interesting and healing, but there was an old man in the audience who said he came from the same area in a different part of Ukraine where my grandfather was from. And I'd mentioned in the Q&A, even though that's from about my mother's side of the family, and that was English. But he stood up and basically managed to say in broken English that he felt he was my cousin, and he very well could be my cousin. So the idea that I bring something where I dig into my life and my family that might have been multiple generations away from somebody else, and then can heal something in him with a film, there's something really beautiful in that. And to me, that's one of the great purposes of art, is to provide some kind of like healing medicine for the hearts of people. And if they happen to be relatives, and of course we're all relatives, I mean, if you go back far enough, I would assume that we're relatives with the trees outside the window as well. If you can do that for your relatives, then you're making good art.
And there's something probably very satisfying that, because you start making a project like any of the ones you mentioned, in a way, which are all kind of about, self-serving, not meant in the negative sense, but you are focusing on self and your own experiences and emotion. And then somebody arbitrarily who is on the other side of the planet potentially connects so deeply. And then, it's like this reward.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't intend to make this film for this cousin, quote unquote, but you end up, you did, in a way. I
did, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I mean, the reward, I think, I would say, I hope the reward, usually in my better states of mind, the reward is knowing that, or the reward is that this person out there, or whoever it is who sees my films and has an emotional experience with it, that something in them shifts in a positive way, right?
Right.
The flip side and the negative side is where I want to know about it, and then it becomes my ego and like, oh, I want them to like me. I want
right.
Them to
well, if you had hundreds of people doing that all the time, you'd probably be less interested. It doesn't happen too often. So, but
well, it's strange when I do the screening in Ukraine. Went really well. It was a packed house. I hadn't screened my short film in a long time and got this incredible reaction. And I was sort of high and literally drunk afterwards. I was drunk off of the energy, but I also got drunk because I wanted to film myself being drunk at my own screening. So it was a little bit like I created.
As in during a Q&A?
In the Q&A. So I showed up to the Q&A drunk, deliberately, and filmed it. So because it becomes part of this larger story of me trying to get love and attention from my films. So this is part of the larger documentary.
You're mocking, in a way, you create a scenario where you can kind of make fun of yourself.
I hope so.
Yeah. So, and where is that footage? No one's seen it.
No one's seen it yet. It's okay. It's on my laptop.
Let's go to the videotape.
Go to roll camera 7. Yeah, it's turning into quite a epic documentary that is about healing yourself to heal your ancestors, and healing your ancestors to heal yourself, and ultimately that process. My idea is that, like in cultures that have shamans, the shamans go into the land of the dead and they do battle with demons and death, and then they come back up if they survive and the messages they get provide healing for their community. And so my feeling is that as a filmmaker, as any artist, that's sort of our duty. Like, can we go, do we have the courage to go into the land of the dead, whatever that is? In my case, I'm looking literally at the deaths in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I do battle with that and then change it. And that's also where the influence of Jodorowsky comes in. And he gave me this, what he calls the psychomagic act, which is like it's a technique he developed where he intuits what somebody's kind of problem is in life, or what their current big problem might be. And then he gives them an act to perform that could be seen as like surrealism or theater, but it's like a symbolic act, almost as though like if you had a dream that kind of helped you fix something in your life, but he has you do the dream. So a dream that
right. It's action oriented. Yeah.
So this longer documentary, which will be my third feature, came out of Jodorowsky essentially asking me to revisit my mother's death by performing it.
I think I think we may have talked about this, a little bit in the prior episode we did with you and Ethan in the car ride back from Woodstock.
Oh my God, yeah.
We may have touched on. You remember that?
Yeah, we probably did touch on it because I had just shot it. I think at that point I just shot The Ritual, and then figuring out how to turn that into a story has been a doozy.
Right. And I'm sure it's really gratifying. I mean, it's not, if you don't have to work, it's not as gratifying, right? You have to put a lot of work in.
Oh, I wouldn't mind if it came together instantly. A little ease in life is not a bad thing.
Right. Perhaps you're right. We met in Woodstock. I don't remember the year, but it had to be probably about 2020. Well, Sway Lake would have been what year?
17, I think.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now I live up there. Now I live up here.
You do? In Woodstock?
Yeah. No, but just north of Rhinebeck, across the river from Saugerties. Remember, we even stopped in Saugerties. It's Tivoli.
Tivoli, okay.
Right near Bard College.
Yeah, it's lovely, right?
Yeah, it's so beautiful up here. I don't enjoy this single digit fucking temperature. It's been a cold month. Really, just annoying. But what can you do? It's so beautiful. It really is. Like I was just driving from home. I was driving from a friend who's from Brooklyn, but they have this farm, and it's a whole big story in Hyde Park, which is a little south of here. And I was driving on all back roads, country roads, and it was just like really just blissing out. Beautiful evening. The sky was beautiful, clear, sunny, and everything's covered with snow, and it's just unbelievable. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, 2 deer ran across the road. I was clear of them. You have to be careful. That's why I don't drive fast. But it's so weird to see them like practically February rather. And there's been a lot of deer have been died because of this scourge of this particular insect that has been killing off, like huge numbers of deer this year.
Really? What's the insect?
I forget.
Yeah, okay.
But then I found out apparently it's, this happens every couple of decades to thin out because they do populate. They do overpopulate. So it's deer are so beautiful, and I'm always glad for a deer sighting, and there's just been almost none up here this last year, but it was really nice all of a sudden to see these 2 deer just sprinting across the road. I don't know how I got onto that, but because I moved up here. I just love seeing mountains, Ari. I lived in the city too long. I was just there too long.
Yeah, I'm living by the beach in Venice, California now, and having being able to jump in the ocean, get that salt water, I suppose it's like being able to breathe mountain air. I think we do, well, I do better when I'm connecting with nature in some way, even if it's just jumping in the dirty ocean by the beach. It's still,
yeah, but sure.
Still gets, I mean, if I go out early, if I, especially if I'm out on the water, if I'm surfing, or by the water, if I'm just walking at 6:30 in the morning, there'll be
nobody's out there.
Pelicans and seagulls. Well, there are other surfers out at that hour, but before the sun comes up, the pelicans are the best. The way they fly, it seems like 1 centimeter off the top of the smooth waves, and they fly together. And eagle, I've been trying also to have some kind of emotional connection to seagulls, but I just can't. I can't make a connection with them.
But the scavengers,
well, they're scavengers, and they seem to be each of them is looking out for himself or herself. It doesn't seem like there's a real, I mean, they'll fly together, but I think it's out of fear, because it's like they're kind of flocking out of a sense of not love for each other, but, well, maybe if there's a predator, it'll get the other one.
Yeah, in a way, it's actually a selfish act to fly together.
Yeah. But the pelicans, well, I don't know the emotions of seagulls, and so I can't pretend to know. Maybe they have a beautiful internal life, but the pelicans, I think they do. They fly together. They seem to be a community. So whatever.
And how long have you lived there?
I've been here. Well, last year, before I went to Europe, I went to Europe for most of the fall, because I wanted to shoot in Ukraine, and then I was helping a friend with his documentary in France. And then I went to the Canary Islands in Spain to do a Werner Herzog boot camp. Werner Herzog, has he been on your show?
Yeah, there's a very, yeah, it was a fun episode. He did the show last year, right after I moved up here.
Okay.
And it was an unbelievable experience. The height of I could quit the show after that.
Yeah. So I spent 12 days in a group of, film students, essentially, with Herzog. We showed up in the Canary Islands, having never been there before. And he said, okay, now everyone gets to write a movie.
Yeah. Oh, write a movie now. Yeah.
You can do your Herzog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No.
He said,
simple. He says simple.
He what?
One of the pronunciations that I noticed, if you're doing your Herzog, is simple.
Simple.
Simple
is for simple.
Do the doable. No, he said some really wise and wonderful things, and
I'm sure
it was a great experience, because I haven't done Hollywood movies, but I've made indie movies with a proper crew, and in this program there's no crew, it's just you. So I wrote it, directed it, shot it, lit it, did the sound, and edited it all within those 12 days, because on the first day he tells you what the theme's going to be, so you can't come prepared with a script. And I spent most of the time completely terrified that I was going to make a piece of junk. And then somehow I made something that I really, really am proud of. It all came together really in the last, there was a day of screenings or actually a couple of days of screenings at the end. And I thought I would be in the last group, because I was going to be scrambling to finish. And I was shooting later, or the last night I was shooting was later than everyone else. So I said, oh, there's no way I'm going to finish. And then I just kind of crammed through an edit. And he looked at everyone's rough cut and he said, okay, you're done. You show it tonight, which was the first night of screenings. And I, finished shooting all of like 35 hours before that.
Well, within the context of 12 days, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's not, that's enough time.
Anyway,
so how many people were in the program class?
It was a lot. It was about 50, which sounds insane, but somehow it felt intimate.
And no doubt. And it's international group, right? I mean, obviously.
Yeah, it was, the it was mostly Spanish speaking people, because we were in the Canary Islands, and the group that runs it is based in Barcelona. So there were a lot of people from Spain, from Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, and then there were a few scattered other countries, including the United States. But I
And
shot. Huh?
And you spoke English, though. Everybody spoke English.
We spoke English officially, yeah. But the local population, for actors, we just had local people who were not professional. So there were some people who shot in English with those people, but I think that didn't work out so great because non-actors speaking a language they don't know very well became a lot of reasons for things to be clunky. And so yeah, I shot in Spanish, which was a great challenge for me because my Spanish is not that good at all. But it's cool. So I have a Spanish language short film now. And I think it's pretty rad. It's not premiered yet, so we'll see. I'm going to try to get it into somewhere big. We'll see. Maybe it's a long shot probably, but you never know.
Is it maybe a spring festival somewhere in
France?
France, the south part of France, the Sud de France.
Yeah,
why not? Hey, listen,
you got to dream. You got to dream.
You got it. Of course, absolutely.
Yeah, this morning I was writing a little. I noticed in one of the submission sections for Cannes, maybe they had it in all of them. One of them said, there was space for a note. So I wrote a little note in French explaining how important the film was to me, and I'm hoping that'll.
Was this Google translation, or do you speak French?
I speak French well enough to read the Google translation and make little corrections.
Oh, okay. I always say I speak. I was going to say I always say I speak just enough French to get myself into trouble, but which is kind of true because I have a very good accent. So then when I say
is also good, people think I speak better than I do.
Right, and then they start running off, and you're like getting every fourth or fifth word, trying to put it together.
I'm the same. Yeah.
Well, so you've been to Georgia, and then I'm thinking about that Georgia's all over the news, of course, because the Russians are Putin is lined up on
Ukraine, my friend, Ukraine.
Oh, what did I say? Georgia? Yeah. Ukraine, rather.
Yes.
I said Georgia because I just had a Georgian filmmaker on my what?
Georgia's on your mind.
Because I just had a Georgian filmmaker on my podcast, who was wonderful. And the film he made, which is called Brighton Fourth, takes largely place in Brooklyn, oddly enough, but it's it's sort of an immigrant story, but it's modern day, kind of a dark comedy, but it's a wonderful film, and came out Friday.
Oh, nice.
Brighton Fourth, worth seeing. Anyway, I that's why I said, but Ukraine. So and then Putin's like, they're lined up on the border, ready to. So you must have friends there now.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends in Ukraine, and what's strange is that, the ones I've talked to have zero concern. That they say, "Oh, it's not going to happen."
Really?
Now, I don't know if they're just getting information that we're not getting here, or if we're getting propaganda here. Certainly, what it seems like is the local government is downplaying any possibility of an invasion, and maybe they're right. I don't know. My Russian friends all think it's a show as well. So,
Pravda.
I went down to the south of Ukraine, to Odessa, to location scout for my dream project that I've been working on for years and hoping to get set up, and wanting to keep. I was sort of inspired by the Werner Herzog project in that I did so much with no crew. I thought, well, maybe I could make this project that I always intended to set up at a place like Netflix. Maybe I do it myself in Ukraine, where it's cheaper and I can shoot in a place that people don't recognize, and that provides a kind of free production design because it doesn't look like anywhere they've seen before. Did some location scouting down there, and it was really interesting, and there were areas that felt like they could be some messed up version of Mexico or California, but not quite, and that's really cool for me for this project. But then I thought, okay, I don't know if I can spend 6 months in pre-production in a country that might be getting invaded.
Right.
soon.
No.
But yeah, I maybe it's all just for show, and I just don't know, because I have another friend who just came here to California, and he was here yesterday, and I said, "You're going back?" He said, "Yeah, nothing's gonna happen." So we'll see.
Wonder what, I try to make sense of all that, but
yeah, I mean, you know, well, we don't need to talk about geopolitics. I mean, it seems like there's a long-standing feeling in Russia that Ukraine really was just part of Russia, and it was an arbitrary.
Oh, I understand that.
Country.
Sure, a lot of people don't feel like it's a country. I know.
Yeah, and in Ukraine,
Nonsense.
they definitely feel that they are a country. Whether
yeah, if anybody's ever met a Ukrainian and then they were, and you called them a Russian or asked if they were Russian, you know that there's a strong national sense.
Yeah, and
I
didn't know
their identity.
I thought maybe, you know, because when I was traveling in the Baltics, the Russians in Latvia felt a little bit like they were still Russian, because the language was much more different from Latvian than Ukrainian and Russian are more similar languages. But in Ukraine, the Russian speakers really identify as Ukrainian.
It doesn't, I mean, they could speak the exact same language. It doesn't matter. The point is that their history.
Yeah.
You know, what are the Russians interested in the Ukraine, or what are they interested in Ukraine that makes them, you know, there's usually you know, profiteering involved, because they have access to something that, you know, meanwhile Latvia maybe not so much, so who cares, you know. It's so they you could have very different experiences, even though maybe Russia has
plenty they would want it. There's plenty they'd want in Latvia too, but I think
I'm just being, you know, making an example. But yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, I spent a lot of time in the former Soviet socialist republics, but you know, it was interesting to really connect with when I was there two years ago, and I was in Lithuania and Latvia and Belarus and Ukraine and Georgia too, actually. But you know, and discovering and going to the towns where my grandmother and grandfather on my father's side were born. My grandmother's town is in Belarus, and my grandfather's in Ukraine, and seeing if I could feel an energetic connection to them. And I really did in Ukraine. I had an experience where I went swimming in this creek in this little village, and nobody around, no tour guide, you know. I managed to get myself there. It was like almost a day's trip to get there. I started crying in this creek, and I don't cry. Like I would need drugs to cry, like Cryagra shouldn't be applied for. It's not easy for me to cry. I started crying. And then when I got back a few hours later to cell phone reception, a friend of mine in Kyiv who had been researching this town, you know, for fun while I was away, I got a bunch of texts from her saying, "Hey, if you make it to the town, you should go to this creek in the north. That's where all the Jews were shot."
Oh my gosh.
And that's where I had been swimming, and that's where I started crying.
Wow, that's
no
intense.
knowledge that this was the spot.
Right.
So, you know, there
it goes almost full circle back to what we started talking about in terms of ancestral.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like connection. You know, it's very
contributed to my idea that this, you know, maybe my going back to this town and to this creek provided some healing retroactively, you know, maybe. for them for
with whatever you felt.
ancestors or cousins or relatives who died there to see me. You know, I don't necessarily think there are ghosts wandering around there, but like something in the land maybe healed. Who knows?
Sure. And oh yeah, no, I think it was my grandparents, my great grandparents came as children to this, to the US. So I feel very far removed from it, though I too, came from the Baltic Sea to St. Petersburg on a boat with my parents.
Wow.
About 15, 20 years, probably about 20 years ago, and pushed my parents out of the way, said, I want to be the first to come back to the homeland and put my feet on this. Well, I kind of, the gangplank thing, whatever. I just kind of said, me first. I wanted
Pushed them off the boat?
No, not quite. But it was intense experience. And I kind of feel so distant from it. I feel like I really feel like I need to go back to,
Yeah, it's really wonderful to go back there. I mean, at the same time, I had a sense, particularly in my grandfather's town, the one that had this experience, I kind of felt the energy of my grandfather wanting to get the hell out, his impatience. And I thought, okay, this is a beautiful experience, but I can see being 12 years old and stuck in this little village, and, there's a threat at all times. Just wanting to get out, and he tried to convince his parents to come with him, and they were like, no. And he just pieced out. He was gone, headed out at 12 by himself. So amazing. It's interesting to, all of these experiences I think have influenced that, the TV show that I was thinking maybe I could shoot in Ukraine or Mexico, who knows, but it's a fantasy. It's a futuristic action thing with a lot of ecological themes to it, I'll say. Passion project. But I'm realizing even that one, though it's wildly different from my documentary about my family, it's also dealing with healing, going back and healing the land and healing yourself and healing your ancestors. So it seems to be an obsession of mine.
Good to know your obsessions.
Yeah. What are your obsessions?
Oh, mine?
You don't have to know what they are.
I have certain obsessions too. And actually, it just sounds so cliche, but I really am. Death is kind of is always sort of looming. It's not a good obsession.
Yeah, as a general thing, it's out there.
Yeah. My mortality, always kind of crunching the numbers.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think happens after death? Anything?
Not much. Yeah. I wish I felt something different about it. But then I see Ricky. I try to get into like the mind frame of Ricky Gervais, who says, he doesn't have any fear of it or worry about it. He goes, life exists for how many millions of years before me. It'll just be this. It'll be I wasn't around and didn't exist, so it'll be just go back to that again. Okay, yeah. Well, it's a pretty healthy way of looking at it, actually.
Well, one thing that comforts me when I think about geological time that way is, okay, yeah, we weren't around, and that, wouldn't it be great to be around to see the dinosaurs, but we weren't around. Well, guess what? We were around. Our physical matter, I mean, other than what might have like rumbled into the atmosphere on meteors, for the most part, your physical matter was here on Earth. And I find that kind of fascinating. Like my cells weren't cells, but my carbon was carbon.
Oh, true.
Nitrogen was nitrogen, and it was all here.
Yeah.
We were here. Our bodies were here.
So do we remain then as well?
Yeah. I mean, unless we get shot off into space. Elon Musk may not be here if he's
right.
On his way to Mars, and then
Jeff Bezos
lost in the way.
When they make their colonies up in the whatever moon.
Yeah, I don't buy any of that.
Yeah. It's just a kind
It's
of
the space between the planets is so big. I mean, if you go to Mars, like, what's it take, like 2 years to get there or something, and then the radiation would kill you within a few days unless you're like in full protect. It just doesn't. We get to figure out how to treat our planet like the garden that it is.
I knew this would turn into an environmental episode. No, I'm
because of me.
If we end on an environment, I was thinking the other day just how many, I thought, would be a good, like, film series would be all those kind of environmental horror films that have come out in the last 10 years. It's very depressing, but there's been so many, it's sort of this whole subgenre of science fiction or of horror films is.
Yeah. I mean, for good reason. Massive parts of the world are sick,
right?
Physically sick, and it's pretty shocking that most people don't really focus. I mean, it's hard to focus on. What are you going to do? It's horrifying and heartbreaking. So what do you do about it? And this is the question that I asked myself for years in writing this project, this mystery project that I can't tell you much about, but I'm trying to get made, whether it's in Ukraine or somewhere else. The question I asked myself is, what do you do with that pain? And how do you apply it so that it can actually turn things around? I mean, which is a hard thing to imagine, but so the story of this young girl who has a bit of a Cassandra quality to her, except their personality is completely different, but in the sense that she is full of anger and fear and knows what's going on, and nobody will listen to her. She gets to go through a journey of transformation into herself, because that needs to be healed first. I don't think you can be an effective warrior if you are broken inside. And so that's the journey is one of finding joy. And then through that emotion, you can actually do something. So it took me a long time to figure out a plot that would deliver that. Like, not just as an idea or someone coming in with a monologue at the end to explain it. Like,
right. Like what instigated her journey.
Yeah, an actual plot where it's just the actions take her on that journey, and
right,
instigating
incidents and all.
Yeah, and not falling into the trap of, the Avatar trap, where you have this really strong environmental message and this beautiful sense of, the jungle or whatever it was called, right, in Avatar. But then he wrote himself. I mean, he was obviously successful, and it's silly for me to say, I'd be happy to have that kind of success. But from a spiritual and transformational point of view, he wrote himself into a corner where the only way he could win was doing a kind of Ewoks thing, where like the nature people kind of fight back using sticks and stones, essentially, against the big machine. And I don't think it's going to work that way. I think that's an old model. That's the David and Goliath model for conflict resolution and for transformation. And, the David and Goliath model is a weaponry model, essentially. I can't remember who. I think it was the Malcolm Gladwell who pointed that out. I can't remember. But so it really took a lot of work to figure out, because I had written a bunch of endings to this thing where, like, basically there's good guys fight back and there's all these shenanigans and all this stuff. And I'm like, but that isn't how it works. You got to actually transform yourself and transform the world around you, but through through self-transformation. And then how do you turn that into drama when people are expecting the, you know, the mano a mano at the end with the bad guy? So Miyazaki is the filmmaker who does that the best. He's able to have these massive conflicts with a strong voice for nature, and the good is not 100% good and the bad is not 100% bad, and they
He's
find
the Ghibli, the Japanimation.
Yeah. He's a genius. He's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, in my opinion. But so his stories resolve in a way where you sense that the hero is transforming herself into something that changes the world around her, rather than, and there are battles for sure, lots of battles, but it's not, the victory doesn't come in the battle. Yes.
The work of transforming.
Yeah.
Is the victory. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm intrigued.
Well,
and everyone watching out there.
Yes, I think this is the project that Hollywood is looking for right now. So with my team, we've been strategizing how to make it something that is undeniable when we pitch it, because I really think it's the TV show that the world desperately needs, and probably there are people out there who are looking for it. So it's a matter of connecting with those people who are in the business of telling stories for the profound reason that stories can rewrite the dream life of a society. And until we change the way we dream, until we change the way we imagine that we're meant to be here on the planet, then we're going to keep doing the same stupid mistakes, which at this point we can't afford to make mistakes for another 10 years even.
I think it's a great place to
stop this. A little too heavy for you? Sorry, man. I should go surfing.
No, it was a kind of a hopeful message. What?
I'll feel better when I go surfing. It's fine.
Oh, you're gonna go out?
No,
in the morning.
In the morning. The sun's going down now. It's probably
It's like late. 5. Yeah, something.
20.
Yeah. Ari Gold, nice to catch up with you. Really nice.
Wonderful to see you. I'll say hi to the pelican. You say hi to the deer.
I will. And if you find yourself coming east, you'll let me know, I hope.
Okay.
You know, and I know I'm supposed to go out. My son is looking at UCLA. He's turning 18.
So maybe you'll be visiting.
What's that?
If you come visit, say hi.
I'm supposed to find time. I just started this new job, and it's it's hard to look at taking off time, but I have to figure something out. But yeah, I'll let you know too, for sure.
Okay.
I will. All right.
May the force be with you.
Great seeing you.
Yeah, great seeing you.
All right, man. Have a nice evening.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
Bye.